Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nobody Is Shiftier, because in fact, nobody is shiftier than the Shifty Hippo. So guys, just real quick, wanted to dive in here. I think I got to talk with everybody last week. In fact, I know I did. Coming back to you now a week later, had my endoscopy. That seems like that went relatively smoothly. Looks like I got some acid reflux, but that's about all that they got going for me now. Got some biopsies out to make sure I'm good, but I'll keep you guys in the loop. I about to run some stool samples here in a little bit, so that should be, for all you young kids out there, just wait till you turn 30. Shit starts going downhill real quick. On that note, we're going to drink a little sip of the beer, and we're going to start talking some sports. Acid reflux. All right. So we're going to kick it off with the NBA today. The NBA season is now underway, and we have a little bit of an idea of what we're looking at least. Granted, there's always going to be a team that's near the top of the conference early on in the year that's going to come down. And obviously, when it starts off, it's like a 3-1 team. You don't really put any credence behind it. But now that we're starting to see some of these teams get double-digit wins and they still have very few losses, we kind of have an idea of who those top-tier teams are going to be. Just keep in mind there are teams like last year, Chicago was leading the East for a large chunk of the season. I think they ended up finishing as like the 6th seed or something like that. They really dropped off in the second half of the year. Boston, conversely, was a few games under 500, if I'm not mistaken, going into about the halfway point. They turned it around and made it all the way to the NBA Finals. So there is still movement to be made in the NBA, but we have a pretty decent idea of who those top-tier teams are, at least for the beginning portion of the season. So my favorite part of all this, the Milwaukee Bucks, all they did is got healthy. Best team in the league. It's like all these teams in the East spent all this money trying to do what they can to get in these players. Oh, we got to compete with Boston. We got to compete with Boston. Oh, man, we're going to have to compete with Miami. Did y'all forget about Milwaukee? Like, all they did was get healthy. I don't know that they added anybody this offseason. And Chris Middleton just came back. That's all it was. Best team in basketball. And I think they'll continue to be. I think they'll probably I really don't think that they're going to struggle even out in the East. I think Boston's still their top tier competition. Miami still hasn't gotten their shit together. I don't know what's going on over there. And I think this is Milwaukee's season to lose. When I look at some of the other teams that are towards the top of the Eastern Conference, I don't trust that the Cavs and the Hawks are going to stay quite where they are in these standings. Now, one thing to keep in mind is even there's every year there's going to be a team that comes in at like 2 or 3 that you're like, well, I'm not really that worried about them. And that might be what maybe the Cavs are this year. And I think that the Cavs are a very good team. Don't get me wrong here. I just think that there's more talent in some of the other teams out East that ultimately is going to overcome what the Cavs are bringing to the table, even though I do think the addition of Donovan Mitchell is huge there. That gives them that star player that they've been looking for. And then you add that into the roster that they already have that has been a very successful young team over the past, really couple of seasons. So they are going to continue to be good. Atlanta, I'm not buying that just the simple addition of DeJounte Murray already makes them this top level team in the East. I just don't see it. I think you're going to see some of the teams that aren't quite there yet get it figured out. I wouldn't be shocked if Miami gets something rolling, even though it really doesn't look that great right now. I think you'll see some things out of Toronto. They're always solid. They're going to be towards the top. Philly's probably going to get something going. I just don't think that we're going to see necessarily the Cavs and the Hawks both be part of the top 4 come end of the season. And I know Toronto's right outside of that, so that's probably only a matter of time for the Hawks. But, it is cool to see Cleveland be this good because, honestly, outside of their LeBron years, you'd have to go back to the late 80s, early 90s when it was Mark Price, Brad Doherty, and Larry Nance. It was that their core back then. I mean, that was the last time that the Cavs were any good. So it's really cool that the Cavs have put something together post that era that didn't have LeBron attached to it because they really weren't able to do it for so long. When we look at the Western Conference, the Jazz clearly don't know how to tank. That's all I heard going into this season was the Jazz were going to absolutely be terrible. They got rid of Rudy Gobert. They got rid of Donovan Mitchell. They got nothing. They got nothing. No, they currently sit on top of the Western Conference. I believe they're 10-3. And it's like, well, I mean, the organization might have been thinking let's tank, but clearly the guys that are playing, and granted, obviously that's always the case. Anytime that you hear a team is tanking, that's not like you won't see, for example, like Davis Mills take a snap and go, oh no, we're tanking. I'm going to throw this ball right into the second row. The players are going to play, but it is a shocking group of talent, we'll call it, out there in Utah. I mean, granted, when I say this, keep in mind, I'm not telling you that I could go out there and play for the Utah Jazz. No, 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 no. But I mean, those guys, I mean, they've got some players that at one point in their careers appeared to be very good teams. I wouldn't necessarily call this group of talent, this group of collectives, to be something that should be anywhere near the top of that conference. Additionally, when you look at some of the other teams there, I think that we're going to see some teams making somewhat of a move out that way as well from a position standpoint in the standings. For example, the Warriors, I don't know if they are. I don't know if they're just unraveling. I don't know exactly what's taking place. Steph's still having a great beginning to the season. I think that's something that, as much as it pisses me off, anybody could have seen coming. It's Steph. He's going to do that. But they're coming in here. I think they're 4-7 currently, and it's not looking very good for them. I don't feel great about the Warriors. I feel pretty good that they're probably still going to find their way into the playoffs, but they don't look like the same kind of dominant team that they've been over the course of, the majority of the last 10 years at this point. Well, at this point, I guess maybe about 8 years, but they've been playing so well for so long outside of, 1 year when everybody was hurt and it was just Steph out there. And I think that this might signal somewhat of an end for that dynasty. Obviously, as it comes to the end of the season anyway, you have to start making decisions mostly on guys like Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins. I mean, who are the guys you're going to be keeping there? Jordan Poole. Obviously, I think you're going to be looking towards getting your younger guys more playing time. You're going to be seeing more of Wiseman. You're going to be seeing more of oh God, I'm blanking on their other two young guys. I know they got three of them, Kaminga, and they got another one out there too. But we'll see the transition to those younger players, and obviously they're not going to be doing anything moving Steph. But it's going to be curious to see what they do with guys like Klay and Draymond, who, they still think of themselves as the highest level of player that there is within the sport. And I just don't think that they necessarily are anymore. And it's not to say that they're washed. It's not to say that they're bad, because that's the first thing that everybody goes to. Oh, he's washed. Like, I hear people saying that about Brady right now. He's like second in the league in passing yards. I'm like, he's up on washed. I mean, yeah, it's not looking as great as it has, but he's up on washed. Don't refer to Klay and Draymond as washed. Keep in mind, especially with Draymond, if you look at his points per game total and tell me anything based on what you see there, I don't give a shit. You clearly have never watched Draymond Green play basketball, because that dude's never been a point scorer. He's been the guy that goes, he plays phenomenal defense, he gets rebounds, and he's very good with the ball in his hands and putting it in the right people's hands to score. It's just the talent that he possesses. Klay Thompson, conversely, I mean, he's missed a lot of time lately, but I'm curious to see if he really ever gets his shooting stroke back. And, him and Draymond both, two of the best defenders that the NBA has had over the course of the last decade, and both of them, they're getting older and they're not as mobile defensively as they used to be. So I'm curious to see what the Warriors do come the end of this year. I do think Luka's probably your favorite to win MVP thus far this year. Granted, I didn't pull it up that way when I was pulling up, what I wanted to talk about with that. But I know that Luka's on a pace right now to potentially catch a Wilt Chamberlain record, which is very rare that you catch one of his records. But most consecutive 30-point games. I don't remember exactly how far behind he is. I know he's very close. And I know he didn't play in the last game. I don't think that messes with it because he didn't play in it. I think it's games that he plays in. But Luka Doncic currently is averaging 34.8 points per game, which is astronomical. We haven't seen anybody do that in a pretty long time. I think Kobe was the last guy that did that. Shooting 49.8%, and considering that he's shooting like 28 or 29 from downtown, yeah, that means everything he's taking inside of the line is going in. He's got 8.2 rebounds and 8.1 assists per game. So, I mean, you see how well-rounded he is. And honestly, I think the only competition he's going to have there for MVP is Giannis. I mean, yeah, you could say Jokic, but I really don't think that they're going to give him 3 in a row. Like, I don't know how he got it last year over Embiid. And frankly, I just don't see where it is that you wouldn't be looking at just these two guys, unless, I mean, there's always going to be somebody that comes out from somewhere. And, I don't think it's going to be LeBron this year, as unfortunate as that is for me. LeBron, I got to be honest, again, not washed, but I'm seeing potentially what might be the first signs of maybe coming down from the peak. I mean, honestly, one thing that I've said and I've contended with, and I'm okay if you disagree with me on this in all seriousness, this doesn't bother me when people tell me that I'm wrong. I think that up until last year, or really up through to the beginning of this season, I would still rather have LeBron James than any other player in the NBA. You tell me I get a player for a season, who do you take? I'm taking LeBron over, or had been taking LeBron over Giannis, LeBron over KD, LeBron over Luka. I now 10-year plan, different story. But for one season, every year up until this year, I'm saying LeBron. And as I'm watching this season unfold, the only thing that I wonder to myself is if LeBron's somewhat just mailing it in, because this season appears to be that one that, well, we're probably not going to go very far. So I don't see the point. I'm going to catch Kareem's record as long as I stay healthy this year. That might be what the mindset is. He might kind of already folded on this year. I don't know. I know that LeBron's a little bit different that way. Mentally, he does his game a little bit differently. But I don't think that he's going to be the one coming for MVP. I could see a scenario where, I mean, maybe our race is Giannis and we got Luka. I don't know. DeMar DeRozan always randomly throws his name in there somewhere out throughout the course of the year. I mean, who knows? DeMar DeRozan, go ahead, make your little December magic that you do every year and then fade away. There's always somebody. So be on lookout for that. Otherwise, I really think the Western Conference here, when we look at it as a whole, I look at this. I don't think Utah is going to win it. I think Phoenix is still the best team in the West. I thought they were last year. They played basketball better than every other team in the NBA last year, and then they just unfolded in the playoffs, part due to injury and part due to whatever the hell was going on with DeAndre Ayton. I'm still trying to figure that piece out because it looks like everything's fine, but we'll see. I don't trust that long term. By the way, if my voice sounds a little bit raspy, I didn't notice it till I started doing this. That's probably because I had a camera in my throat 2 days ago. So apologies if I don't sound like my full-fledged voice. I haven't noticed it when I'm talking, but apparently when I'm talking into a microphone at my normal volume, it does feel like it's coming out a little bit light and raspy to me. So apologies, I guess. We're going to take a sip of the beer, and then we're going to move over to the NFL. Stay thirsty, my friends. NFL. What I'm going to do this week for the NFL is, rather than give a whole bunch of different takes, right? We're pretty much at the halfway point of the year. I'm going to give a little bit of a breakdown for what I see in every one of the games coming up this week. And I'm going to go over some of the midseason awards here for what the guys are that are kind of in the running, and just give you my thoughts on what I'm seeing so far. So we're going to start off. We got the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. Falcons -3 here. I mean, Atlanta has a legitimate chance to reclaim the division at the end of this week here. They're going to Carolina, which in my mind is still the worst team in football. I know that they got more wins than the Texans. I don't care. They look like the worst team in football to me, and it doesn't really look that close. I don't know what Carolina's planning on doing this week at quarterback. I don't know if they're going back to Baker, if they want to just put out PJ Walker again. Who knows? I really have no idea what Carolina's looking to do at quarterback this week. Regardless, Atlanta's proven that they're not a bad football team. I thought early on this year, I thought they would be one of the bottom 5 teams. They're not that. They really are a decent football team. They're not somebody that's going to make a lot of playoff noise. I don't think we have to worry about Atlanta coming out of the NFC and dealing with that in the Super Bowl this year. But Atlanta's got something that's working for them. And a lot of it's really built on that Marcus Mariota doesn't make mistakes. As long as he stays healthy, I think that Atlanta's offense will continue to score points. Defensively, there's not a lot there in Atlanta, but they really have been able to just consistently keep up with teams. And that's so far all they've had to do. They have a real chance here because game two, we've got Seattle technically at Tampa, but this game's being played in Germany. Tampa's currently a 2.5 point favorite there. Look, guys, the only thing that I can see as far as Tampa winning this game is just because of how far Seattle has to travel to get to Germany. Like that is a far flight. It's like it's an all day flight going just from Seattle to Tampa. Now you add on, you're going across the pond, you're heading over to Europe, you're going into Germany. They're going to be on a plane for like 22 hours or something dumb like that. It's going to be a long flight. That's the only thing that worries me as far as Seattle this game. Otherwise, I've seen nothing from Tampa that says to me, yeah, no, that team should beat that Seahawk team. And even as a Seahawk fan, and also as somebody that does not typically bet against Brady, I don't see how Tampa would be considered to be better than Seattle here. The only thing that I can factor in is the potential of that travel. Seattle historically has been a poor road team throughout the entirety of their franchise just because they have to go further than every other team to get somewhere to play. Outside of obviously when they play teams like Denver, San Francisco, teams that are already set up right out west there. But when they travel all the way to the East Coast, they typically struggle. Well, they're going to be adding on a whole nother, probably more than double what they would be going just to go to Tampa. So I think that this is going to be interesting, but as far as I'm concerned, Seattle's played significantly better football than Tampa this year, and I think that Seattle's going to take this one. Move over to the next game here. We got the Lions at the Bears. The Bears are -3. Here's the weird thing about this game, and I don't want to touch this game with a 10-foot pole as far as betting it. Granted, I pick every game, so I will be picking this game. But this one's tough because Chicago, for a long time this year, looked like the worst team in football, and Detroit looked like they were going to put up 35 points on everybody. Well, Detroit's offense has kind of come back down to earth. They've played, off and on. I think that when DeAndre Swift's in the lineup, they play a very much more balanced game, which really works for them. It opens up their passing attack. Amon-Ra St. Brown is back in the lineup too, which helps. I still don't know why they traded away TJ Hawkinson. That makes no sense to me. But they've got enough weaponry that they can put up points. Chicago, conversely, they figured out their offense in the last couple of weeks. They figured out, okay, stop making Justin Fields try to do any sort of offense that we've had him try to do. Let's just let the kid kind of play because he's got a pretty good arm and he's got phenomenal ability with his legs. I'd say that behind Lamar Jackson, he's probably the next best runner of the football at the quarterback position. You can go ahead and make an argument for guys like Jalen Hurts. That's fine. I'm not going to go against you. I would just simply tell you that I think that I would say Justin Fields is probably behind Lamar Jackson, the best rushing quarterback in the NFL. Chicago's lean into it. They're finally like, okay, you know what? Let's do some RPOs. Let's see what we can do downfield. Granted, they don't have a lot of weaponry to throw to, but they're taking some more chances. And I think that that's really benefiting Justin Fields, and it's made him go from what looked like the worst quarterback in the league to, let's be honest, like the 20th best quarterback in the NFL, maybe not even that. But it looks a lot better than it did the first few games this year. And it's been recent that this has come on. So I'm having a hard time with this one because even up until last week, I probably would have taken the Lions here. But this game being in Chicago and with Chicago kind of on the run that they've been on offensively, I think I'm leaning Bears here. But again, this is a game that I will tell you as a betting man, I wouldn't bet this game. I would not bet this game. This game will not have money on it for me. We're going to move over to the Browns at Dolphins. Dolphins -3.5. Here's the problem with this spread to me. This game is in Miami. So what you typically do, you make the home team a 3-point favorite. And then you say, well, how much better is this team than the other team? So you're telling me that Miami's a 0.5 point better team than Cleveland? I don't think so. I would definitely lean towards Miami on this spread. When you look at it, Tua Tua is one of the MVP leaders right now. I think he's fourth in betting odds. And granted, that's not to say that he's the entirety of this offense. Clearly, Tyreek Hill's made a massive difference. It's opened up what Jalen Waddle can do. It's opened up what Gesicki can do. Raheem Mostert's come on relatively, relatively recently. Last week wasn't a great week, but you've seen the Dolphins offense really kick into gear here after having a couple of games that made you go, like game one, they just squeaked out against New England. That didn't look great. But it turns out New England's not bad. They're just, and they did it against Pittsburgh in Tua's first game back from injury, where they kind of did the same thing. But again, it was Tua's first game back, and they looked awesome for the first quarter and a half in that game. I think the Miami is a significantly better team than Cleveland is currently as it is. And Nick Chubb's also still battling some injury. He's still questionable. I wouldn't be shocked if he plays. But I think that even if he does, Miami's a significantly better team here. I'm taking Miami on that spread. Got Broncos, Titans. Titans -3. The thing that worries me here is that this is the Broncos coming off the bye now. And I'm just curious because Denver has put up 20 points in one game. It was their last game in London right before the bye. And granted, I think they scored 21. So it's not like they scored a lot. But what did they figure out during that bye week? Because you know that they were working on it. And I'm not sure that it's going to be any better than it has been because we've seen plenty of proof that it's not that good. But for 1 week, do they just have enough juice to get past the Tennessee team that, honestly, I mean, Tennessee's coming off now what's technically considered a short week. I mean, granted by hours, but I think that Tennessee has proven, I mean, Derrick Henry's already back on the leaderboard of rushing yards this season. Shocker. Derrick Henry leads rushing. But with Malik Willis in there, I'm curious to see what that also brings because Denver's played very good defensively. And if they're able to give any type of shutdown to Derrick Henry, then you put the ball in Malik Willis's hands. And Malik Willis has been making some throws. They haven't trusted him to make a lot of throws. I mean, he's been throwing the ball like 5 for 10, but the 5, they look pretty good. And I think as he settles into a groove, they actually might have something there. So we get to see what that lines up to. I'm leaning Tennessee here, but there's a fear of the unknown in Denver. We got Minnesota at Buffalo. Buffalo is -6. The only real question that I have is the questionable status of Josh Allen and his elbow. And it's not so much do I think he's going to play, because I do, but how well will he be able to play with this injury? Because keep in mind, Buffalo is not a running team. They're not going to be a team that hands the ball off 25, 30 times and Josh Allen gets to kind of rest up while still playing. They're going to be snapping the ball to Josh Allen. And I don't know that Josh Allen has the wherewithal to say to himself, like, hey, you know what? I should just be trying to check it down to running backs coming out of the backfield. I should be trying to check it down, or we should have a bunch of short routes set up so that I'm not having to put myself through a lot. Josh Allen's going to want to put that shit downfield to Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. That's what Josh Allen does. He's also over his last, I want to say it's over the last like 5 quarters or something like that, has like 6 turnovers. So there's a lot to look at with Josh Allen right now. And granted, the other piece of this too is keep in mind that defense he just played against with the Jets. He's not going to be facing quite that defense with Minnesota. Not that Minnesota has a bad defense, but it ain't the Jets defense. The Jets have a legitimately really good defense. I don't know that I love the spread on this. I think I'd lean towards taking Minnesota on that spread, but I'm not betting money line by any means there. Next game over, we've got Houston at the Giants. Giants are -6.5. I actually think I like the Texans to cover the spread here, and it's 2 things. The Giants have not blown out anybody at all, and the Texans have not really been blown out by anybody at all. You could probably find a game or 2 that they have, but it was probably against teams like Buffalo and Kansas City. Houston stayed in there. They don't go away, so I wouldn't be shocked if we're just talking about like a 23-20 kind of game. I still think the Giants win. They've proven that they can find a way to win, and the Texans have not. That's why they have 1 win and a tie. But I do think that the Texans keep this game close. We move over to the Jags at the Chiefs. Chiefs are -9.5. I don't necessarily love that spread, but I can't bet against that. Like if the Chiefs are up for 40, I don't think the Jags are putting up 30. Let me just make it said that easily. It's all a matter of how much Kansas City scores. And keep in mind that Kansas City's defense is playing pretty well right now, too. I usually you see Kansas City with the late season defensive surge. They've actually been kind of sticking with it all year. So I think that we're going to see a large chance that Kansas City covers that game, but I probably wouldn't put my money there either. We have the New Orleans Saints at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Saints are -2.5. And here's another one where I look at it and I say, so you're telling me Pittsburgh would be technically the 3-point favorite here. And we're saying that New Orleans is about 5.5 points better. Now, New Orleans hasn't proven to be a very good football team this year, but you know what they have proven? They're consistent, they're steady, and they're probably going to put up a little over 20. Their defense, not bad. Pittsburgh, beat up defensively, although still playing pretty well. They haven't been able to get the run game going. I know very well I have Najee Harris in my fantasy football league. He ain't doing shit. Kenny Pickett, I mean, he's a spark, but he's not very good. I don't really have a way around that. That's where I'm judging Kenny Pickett right now. It's not very good. So when I'm looking at that spread, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I feel like I like New Orleans by a lot more than 2.5 there. I could see this game being something along the lines of even like a 20-10. I don't think it's going to be high scoring. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot going on there, but a lot of it I think is just going to be lackluster offensively. And keep in mind too, Alvin Kamara, that guy does all sorts of shit. If Andy Dalton needs him out of the backfield, he's there. If Andy Dalton needs to hand him the ball, he's there. I think that this is one of those where Vegas might have gone a little bit too little on the spread here. Next game over, we got the Colts at the Raiders. Raiders are -6.5. I don't like the Raiders minus anything right now, man. Like that's the problem because I think the Colts are one of the 3 worst teams in football. I legitimately do. When they decided they're sitting Matt Ryan, that was it. It's now the Panthers, the Texans, and the Colts can hang there at number 30. The Colts are bad, but they tend to hang in games, and the Raiders, if they're up 17, that doesn't mean shit because they've blown 3 of those this year. I don't understand it. The Raiders are they're getting leads and then losing them immediately. It looks like also, due to my fantasy league, I heard this news. They're likely placing Darren Waller on IR later today. So without Darren Waller there, granted, he hasn't done a whole lot for them this year, but that's just another weapon that they're now missing. Granted, Foster Moreau in the absence of Darren Waller has played pretty well, but this is clearly going to be a weapon that you now don't have to worry about the same way. And I think this bodes very poorly for the Raiders. And as much as I wouldn't like to take the Colts on this, I think on that spread, I really think I like the Colts there. But I like the Raiders to win. They should win that football game. If they don't, I think I'm kind of pissed. It's twofold. One of which I have one of my favorite people at work. He's a big time Raiders fan. I root for the Raiders for this guy. I remember week 1 last year, the Raiders beat the Ravens on I think it was Monday Night Football, week 1, overtime. And I texted him. I'm like, yes, look at this, your boys. And I get excited for him. The second piece of this is I thought the Raiders were going to be a top 10 football team this year. I really thought the whole AFC West was going to be this dominant force, and it's just the Chiefs and everybody else again. It's like, God damn it. But I really thought, I know what I get with the Raiders, and I have a 10-7 team ready to rip right there. Granted, they should be better than they are. If they just didn't blow those 3 leads, they'd be a 500 team, but still, even that's not what they should be. It's just pissing me off. Next game, we got the Cardinals at the Rams. The Rams are -3, and this might be the most unpredictable game that there is this week, honestly, because Arizona has shown flashes of, they got the thing. They're good. And then they've shown a lot of flashes of, no, they're not really that good. The Rams, they've shown a couple flashes of, oh, yeah, look at that, 31 points. Yeah, look at the Rams. Got their offense figured out in week 2. And then whatever the fuck that was against Tampa last week, they can do that too. So I don't know what to do with that one. If I'm handicapping this in the way where I think it should go, I'm taking the Rams on this. I just got to think to myself that they pull it together to some extent because they're not missing anybody is the thing. It's not like they're down all these players. Their players just aren't playing well. And I know the Cooper Kupp's been battling an injury, but I mean, he's still out there. He's the best receiver in football. I don't see a way in which that's a flaw. And when I look at Arizona, I'm just seeing inconsistencies all across the board. So when I look at this matchup, it should be, especially in LA, it should be a Rams game. But I don't know what the fuck to do with it because neither one of these teams has shown me anything with consistency so far this year. I can't even bet on either of them to consistently be bad. That's the thing. If I knew that this team was bad, at least I know this team is bad. These teams are just like, I don't know what we are this week. Probably bad, but maybe. What do you do with that? Next game, and this one I actually really like. Cowboys at the Packers. Cowboys are -5. Green Bay, they don't have shit going for them. In all seriousness, Aaron Rodgers does not trust one of these targets that he's got. He kind of trusts Lazard. That's it. And obviously Aaron Jones coming out of the backfield. But that's it. And he won't throw the ball. Like he has thrown the ball more times behind the line of scrimmage than anybody else, and it's not even close. He's like, I don't think it's double, but he is significantly the highest amount of passes behind the line of scrimmage out of any quarterback in the NFL. That makes no sense to me. It's Aaron Rodgers. He should be putting that shit downfield. That's what Aaron Rodgers does best. And I know why he's not. It's that secretive thing I always tell you guys. He cares more about keeping his passer rating high, or because it's currently the highest passer rating of all time in the NFL over the course of a career. Granted, that might also now be overtaken by some of the guys like Mahomes, Allen, whoever else, but they still have a lot of career left to play. They have more opportunities to have those down years. Aaron Rodgers is leading out of everybody else that's ever played football ever. He doesn't want to throw picks. He's kind of given up on his own team here. Dallas has looked like a top-notch team in football, and as soon as Dak came back, it's like, oh, yeah, no, that's okay, never mind. Yep, this is good again. Because in the first couple of weeks, it really didn't look that great. And then Cooper Rush came in, won 4 games, then they dropped one, and then guess what? Dak's back, and it looks really good. Their offense is humming. Their defense is looking very nice. It looks a lot more consistent than it did last year, where it's not just Trayvon Diggs finding his way to the football, and it's not just Micah Parsons getting all these sacks, even though Micah Parsons is still getting them sacks. But I think the Cowboys are one of the top 6 or 7 teams in the NFL. And I know it kind of sucks to say because almost everybody hates the Cowboys, but they are legitimately good this year. And the Packers are a shell of a team. I honestly don't think that. I think they're giving up on this year is what's happening. And we're watching it actively take place. I think the Cowboys roll them this week. We got the Chargers at the Niners -7. This is another one that I really like. So you're telling me that you think the Niners are 4 points better than the Chargers if it was on a neutral field? I don't. I think these are very even teams. I don't think that the Chargers are as good as I thought they were before the season started, but I do not think of them as a poor team. And granted, I know they are hurt. I know that they are off and on with Mike Williams, off and on with Keenan Allen. I'm pretty confident that Mike Williams is definitely out this week. I don't remember what Keenan Allen's status is, but Justin Herbert can still throw the ball around pretty damn well. And I think he's going to be able to make it work. Austin Eckler is one of the best running backs in the game, which this actually, I know this is going to sound dumb, came as a kind of a surprise to me. I knew he was towards the upper echelon going into this season, but I've gotten to watch him play a little bit more this year. No, he's really, really fucking good. I didn't know he was that good. Like I've seen him here and there and I'm like, yeah, he's solid. Oh, he's really good. I love watching Austin Eckler play. But again, I know that their offense is beat up, especially at the key weapon positions. But I think that the Chargers are going to keep in this game a lot closer than 7 points. I wouldn't be shocked if they get the upset. I would be kind of surprised if the Niners win this one by more than a touchdown. That to me would be surprising. And then we move over to the Monday night game, Washington at Philly. Philly is minus 10.5. I would probably lean Washington on the spread. The Green Lizard out there, Taylor Heineke, he tends to throw the ball and make shit happen. Some days it's just going to be like 17 for 27, 139 yards, a touchdown and a pick. And then some days it's going to be 27 for 34, 376 yards and 3 touchdowns, no picks. You don't know exactly what you're getting from him, but he tends to keep games close. And keep in mind one thing I always say, division rivals, when that spread goes double digits, unless that team sucks and the other team is really good, you take the dog. Double digits, I like the dogs in division rival setups. More so when they're at home of the bad team, but keep in mind too, Philly's now getting into that territory where people are going to start looking at their win-loss record and going, ooh, can they make it all the way to 17-0? Ooh, let's look ahead. When that shit starts happening, you almost would prefer to have one loss on your resume because at least you don't have to worry about that come week 14. And then all of a sudden you're like putting your whole life into, we have to win week 14. And then all of a sudden you get to round 1 of the playoffs and you lost it all because you had to go 17-0. Philly, I think they win this game, but just keep in mind that when teams start getting to this point, they're more apt to lose a game to a team that they shouldn't. So I'm taking Washington on the spread on that game. So that's a little bit of my insight for this week. We're going to talk a little bit here about some midseason awards. All right, first off, let's start off with Defensive Rookie of the Year. So I pulled up some of the guys that are on there right now. They've got Sauce Gardner. They got Tariq Woolen. They got Aiden Hutchinson. They got, what was it? Jack Jones. Is that what his name was? I don't even remember. Corner for New England. And Kevin Thibodeau, Giants defensive end that I saw as 1 sack. And part of this, I think, was that these were some of the guys that were also preseason supposed to be defensive player of the years, because when I looked at the stats, especially for that last guy there, I'm like, well, why the hell is anybody talking about him for this? But then the guys that you got to really look at there, Aiden Hutchinson hasn't been that impressive. It's really a 2-man race. It's Sauce Gardner and it's Tariq Woolen. I personally would lean Sauce Gardner. I think Sauce Gardner has been the best, honestly, the best corner in football this year. And I don't think it's really that close. I think Tariq Woolen, honestly, might be the second best corner in football right now. They might be the best 2 corners in the NFL. Fuck Rookie of the Year. I'm seeing them make more stops than Jalen Ramsey. I've seen Jalen Ramsey get beat a few times this year. I'm not seeing anybody beating Sauce Gardner or Tariq Woolen. It's just not happening. So I think that that's a 2-man race, but I lean towards Sauce Gardner, who, not single-handedly, I don't want to put it that overt, but Sauce Gardner has been a real change in that organization. You have a whole side of the field now that you don't want to throw the fucking ball at, because Sauce Gardner, he might not pick it off, but you ain't getting the completion if you throw it anywhere in his vicinity. That dude is a lockdown corner. I love watching him play. Tariq Woolen also, a lot of the same stuff, bigger size, which, Seattle loves. It's very fitting for what Seattle's always had as their corners. Once upon a time, just keep in mind with that Legion of Boom, Earl Thomas was the small guy at free safety, and he wasn't very small. And then you had Cam Chancellor, who was a fucking linebacker playing safety. Everybody kept saying, you got to throw at Cam Chancellor because he can't turn his hips. He's too big. And then he turned his hips and picked the ball off, too. It was like, oh, yeah, you can't beat him. And then at corner, now we had the Byron Maxwell years. He was a little bit on the smaller end. But you remember when it first started up and it was Richard Sherman and Brandon Browner, who might have been the biggest corner I've ever seen. It was huge. That secondary, it was like a offensive line set, just sitting there covering your receivers. It's like, how the fuck do you get a ball in there? So obviously Seattle likes having a guy like Tariq Woolen on there, but I still lean Sauce Gardner. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I would have to say this would have been a race between Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker. It sucks that Breece Hall got hurt because, one, I think that would have been a cool race. I legitimately think it would have been closer than some people think it would have been. I've heard a lot of people say that Breece Hall would have just run away with it. I've also heard people say that Kenneth Walker would have run away with it. I don't think either way is the case, but I think that would have been a fun race. Right now, we got Kenneth Walker, we got Damian Pierce, we got Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and some dude named Brian Robinson Jr., who's apparently a Commanders running back. He has like 219 yards. He's not in this game. Garrett Wilson's played well. He's obviously been a weapon for Zach Wilson, but I don't think he's on this level. Chris Olave is. He's somebody that I think still legitimately in this race, but I just don't think we're seeing quite the production levels that we do with Kenneth Walker. And kind of the same goes to Dameon Pierce. He's playing fine, but he ain't playing like Kenneth Walker. I think right now Kenneth Walker is probably set to be the offensive rookie of the year, with Chris Olave being the only real competition there. We're going to look at defensive player of the year. Now, I pulled up some of the names here. Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, Aaron Donald. We got Von Miller, Zadarius Smith, and Matthew Judon, who, by the way, is leading the league in sacks. I didn't realize that. Like, I knew that Judon's always getting behind the line and making plays, and that's something he's done his entirety of the time he's been in New England and prior to that in Baltimore. But I didn't realize he was leading the league in sacks. That's pretty cool. That definitely gives him credence. I think a lot of people want to say Micah Parsons just because of what he did last year, and then that he's already got 8 sacks this year. Nick Bosa is playing pretty well, but I feel like he's had kind of a quiet year. Somebody that I think's a little bit off this top tier as far as when you look at just the sack numbers, but I think makes mass impact, is Myles Garrett. He's got 7.5 sacks, so he's got a little bit less than the likes of Matt Judon and Micah Parsons. But the other thing that Myles Garrett does, he's a run stuffer at end, which you don't get a whole lot of those. Like J.J. Watt did that well, but you don't get that very often at the defensive end position. Julius Peppers could do that real well. Reggie White. I mean, it's rare talent that we're talking about when we talk about guys that can do that. And that's what Myles Garrett brings to the table, on top of the fact that he's one of the most dangerous pass rushers in the league. And even when he doesn't get to the quarterback, he's constantly rushing the quarterback. He's got a little bit of the Jadeveon Clowney, except that sometimes he actually gets to the quarterback. So my current pick would be for Myles Garrett, but it is close. That's an absolutely close race, because I really don't think that there's anybody that I listed that shouldn't be a part of this conversation. I think all those guys, they are all still up for it. For offensive player of the year, we got Jalen Hurts, Tyreek Hill, we got Josh Allen, we've got Patrick Mahomes, we got Stephon Diggs, Lamar Jackson, we got, I mentioned Jalen Hurts, we got Justin Jefferson, Nick Chubb, Cooper Kupp, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley. So this is typically when they give this to a player that's a non-quarterback. So, because obviously your MVP, they pretty much always give it to a quarterback, unless there's somebody doing like record-breaking shit elsewhere, which, by the way, keep in mind, might be happening right now in Miami. Tyreek Hill, I think, is still on pace to beat Calvin Johnson's single receiving yards record for a season. So just keep that in mind for NFL MVP this year. I don't think it's going to be Tyreek Hill, just something to keep in mind. That's typically the time that you actually see a player that's non-quarterback win. However, I do think that this would be the time where you would see Tyreek Hill potentially get offensive player of the year, because if he's going out there and doing all this shit and then doesn't win MVP, I think this is where you say, well, he's the offensive player of the year, and you give it to the guy that's a non-quarterback. If not, I mean, I could see, based on whoever wins the MVP, the potential of like a Jalen Hurts, who's clearly running the ball damn near as well as he throws it. But I mean, you could make an argument for Derrick Henry, but he came on late, and I don't know if he's going to gain enough of the room that he lost to really make that back up, because obviously at this point, everybody just tees off on Tennessee's run game. I don't know that he's going for 2,000 yards. You know what I mean? So I'm leaning towards Tyreek Hill for offensive player of the year. For MVP here, got Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Tua, Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins. Look, it's been a magical ride with Geno Smith, but I don't think he's going to be the MVP of the season. Kirk Cousins, probably one of the top 3 years he's ever had, maybe the best. It's not going to be him. I don't think he could make it, Tua. I mean, unless he does some real shit coming down the stretch. Because when you look at the other 3 names on here, Jalen Hurts, I mean, not only is it the only undefeated team and people really give credence to the best record in the league, but the way that Jalen Hurts has transformed his game to be just this accurate downfield passer, now having A.J. Brown there, his ability to hit pretty much everything in stride for anything underneath, and his ability to just simply run the ball. I really think that it's going to be Jalen Hurts if it keeps up this way. Josh Allen would have been there. The last 2 weeks have actually really fucked up Josh Allen's chances. And we'll see. I mean, he could get it back because Josh Allen's been on a fucking warpath all year. He still has a chance to get that back, and I never doubt Patrick Mahomes. No, 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 no. Patrick Mahomes always there. But right now, I would lean towards Jalen Hurts. But if I said by the end of the year, I'd lean towards Allen or Mahomes. Guys, we did it. We made it through another episode. So until next week, ladies and gentlemen, stay thirsty. This has been Nobody Is Shiftier.